Welcome back to the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Cressey, and this is episode 172. We've got a great guest today, a guy who actually speaks to a number of different topics, everything from going through the college recruiting process with a focus on academics and not just athletics. He's also a guy who went through a pretty substantial growth spurt, and he has some insights on how taller athletes can really kind of approach long-term success strategies. He's also a guy who went through a significant shoulder surgery, worked really hard during rehab to come back and pitch in the big leagues. And what I love about his rehab process is he didn't just get asymptomatic. He didn't just perform at a higher level. It's also that he really got educated during the process. So I think he can share some pearls of wisdom for any athletes who are going through rehab and certainly coaches and therapists who may be working with athletes during that time period. So we're in for a great show. This episode is brought to you by Ag1, the most comprehensive NSF certified for sport daily nutritional supplement I've ever tried. With so many stressors in life, it can be difficult to maintain effective nutritional habits and give our bodies the nutrients they need to thrive. As a father of 3 young kids and a co-founder of multiple businesses in multiple states on top of still being an avid exerciser, I know that busy schedules can really take their toll on us. Whether it's poor sleep, exercise or life stressors, environmental factors, or simply not eating enough of the right foods, we can often wind up deficient nutritionally. This is where Ag1 can really help. It's a game-changing nutritional insurance policy. They simplify the logistics of getting optimal nutrition on a daily basis by giving you just one thing with all the best things. That's why I use it daily, as do several of my family members, and we recommend it to a lot of our top athletes. One scoop of Ag1 contains 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced ingredients that work together to fill the nutritional gaps in your diet to support energy, focus, digestion, and recovery. And this can all happen for less than $3 per day and without taking multiple products. While most nutritional supplements come to market and stay stagnant, Ag1 continues to obsessively improve this one holistic formula based on the latest research, producing over 50 improvements in the last decade alone. They invest in the most absorbable and natural source of each ingredient and go above and beyond in third-party testing to ensure their customers continue to receive the highest quality and best tasting nutrition habit on the planet. Whether you're keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, it'll work for you, and it contains less than 1 gram of sugar per serving. They put 75 ingredients through the rigorous NSF certification test to come up with a safe formula that's trusted by some of the world's top athletes, including many of our own at Cressey Sports Performance. Right now, Ag1 is giving our listeners a special offer of 10 free travel packets with their first purchase. Just head to drinkag1.com/Cressey and claim this special offer. These travel packets are perfect for supporting your immune system, energy, and gut health while you're traveling for games, training, or simply on the go. They can be great counterbalance to the less than ideal on-the-road food options that are out there for a lot of our traveling baseball players. So if you want to bridge the gap between deficient and optimal and give yourself the best chance of getting nutrient diversity, head to drinkag1.com/Cressey to get 10 free travel packets with your first purchase. Again, that's drinkag1.com/Cressey, Cressey. You won't regret it. Today's guest is a right-handed pitcher who grew up in Virginia and was drafted by the Washington Nationals in the 35th round of the 2014 Major League Baseball draft. He opted not to sign and instead attended the University of Virginia. After 3 years there, he was drafted by the Colorado Rockies in the second round of the 2017 MLB draft. After working his way through the minor leagues for 3 years, he received an invitation to Major League Spring Training with the Rockies in 2020. During the 2020 COVID season, he was called up to the big leagues from the alternate site and made 3 appearances in September of that year. After struggling with a shoulder injury during the 2021 season, he underwent surgery at the end of the year and missed of all of 2022 while rehabbing. He began this 2023 season with AAA, and after posting a 1.01 ERA over 22 appearances, he was called back to the big leagues by the Rockies in early July and made 15 appearances over the rest of the season. Please welcome to the show, Tommy Doyle. What's up, Tommy?
How we doing?
I'm good. Thanks for doing this, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I see you every day, but this is a much more formal setup, so it's actually good that we're able to touch base via this medium to talk about things.
Absolutely.
All right, so I know your story, or at least some of your story. I will say I actually got to do a little extra homework and learn about you in different ways just from kind of preparing for this. But let's talk a little bit about your path to college baseball. I know you're a Mid-Atlantic guy, which always I think lends itself to some interesting questions where like the Southern kids are all like one sport all the time. The Northern kids tend to be multi-sport. Like Give me the lowdown on your background growing up, and it was the DC area.
Yeah. So I grew up right outside DC in Virginia. Had I have a twin, so I have a twin sister, an older sister, and an older brother. And so we were kind of all just involved in sports growing up. It was just kind of academics and sports were the two. My brother ended up going to Harvard to play baseball, and he's 5 years older. So it ended up he was kind of set the bar for everyone. And so we were like, okay, well now if he went to Harvard, where do we go? Yeah, so basically it just ended up playing a big part of our lives growing up, and I'm happy for it and got to where I wanted to be. So can't complain.
So you mentioned being a multi-sport athlete, like what did that encompass? And then maybe how did the calendar years and your middle school, your high school years kind of shake out?
Yeah. I went to a small private school from like sixth grade on. And so their main thing was like, you need to be involved in either sports or extracurriculars after school. And so I was like, okay, I'll do sports. So I went football, basketball, baseball. But being a small school, like seventh, eighth grade, I was like, baseball, there's not really much going on. So I was like, let me try something different. So I ended up doing lacrosse and loved it. And so I didn't quit baseball, but I definitely switched it up. And it ended up being a lot of fun. And so lacrosse has a huge fan base up north, and it's very popular now. And so kind of glad I tried it, but I'm glad I stuck with baseball in the end.
Do you think that there's anybody else in baseball professionally that played lacrosse like up until that point? I feel like that's a really hard thing to pull off.
Yeah, I mean, probably not, but I mean, you could say the same about probably some other sports. Like, remember Ernie Clement? He played
Yeah.
hockey.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
mean, and that's probably one of the only few you'll
Yeah.
hear about that too.
Well,
So
it was the competing season. I think that's the tricky part about it. So
yeah,
you get I think there are quite a few hockey players in the big leagues, but lacrosse not so much. But hey, it turned
yeah,
out all right, man.
yeah.
But talk to me a little bit about the scouting report of you as a high school senior. Were you a guy? Obviously, you went on to play the University of Virginia, which is a high academic school, great baseball school. Were you a guy that was a candidate to be drafted, or was it one of those things where you needed to go to college and work on stuff?
Yeah, so I kind of seen what my brother went through. He did the head first tournaments. I don't know if you remember
Yeah,
those. Those were back
yeah.
in the day. And so like being the youngest, I mean, we can talk about the being the oldest, being the youngest, and how that kind of plays out in sports as well. But my parents kind of trial and errored with him, and then with me, they're like, just go play, have fun, and if it ends up working out, we can get you on a team and you can go do it. He's like, but we don't want to burn you out by going to tournaments every single weekend, flying down to Florida, going out to wherever just to do that. So I didn't really have anything in my mind kind of going through it, being like, I really want to play pro ball, really want to go to college. But sophomore year, junior year, it started kind of, yeah, this is a reality. Like this could definitely be it. And I committed to UVA my junior fall, I want to believe. Mm-hmm. It's been a while, but I think that's what it was.
That's late by modern standards. Nowadays, like those are done like freshman, sophomore year. It's interesting.
Right.
It's changed.
And then the scouts started to come senior year, started talking a little bit more. Obviously, as an 18-year-old, I'm like, heck yeah, I want to go pro. Like that's so cool. My parents kind of talked me out of it. I mean, looking back, I wasn't ready. I wanted to believe I was, but I wasn't. I was 6'5", 6'6", 185 pounds. Like I had no business going out and living on my own. Like I definitely needed some structure and learn some lessons, especially baseball and life. And that's what I got at UVA. So those 3 years there, I wouldn't take it back for anything.
What's the scouting report on you as a high school 18-year-old? Is it arms and legs flying everywhere and not much command, or was it more refined?
It was fastball, curveball. I'm gonna throw it down the middle. I'm gonna throw a curveball. It's gonna bounce if you swing, which is usually what happened. That's what happens. But I mean, if you want to go back and look at the videos, there's some on YouTube. It was bad. It was just everything flailing around. Like didn't know where my body was going. So yeah.
That's a good lesson for a lot of the parents and kids. Like I wrote a blog about it just recently. It's like we put so much pressure on people to repeat their mechanics perfectly. And I mean, you were obviously a very good prospect through going to play for a really good, ACC school. Like meanwhile, people are putting pressure on their 13-year-old to like meticulously repeat their delivery. It takes time to find your groove.
Yeah. I mean, especially as a taller guy, like it was always a thing. Everyone said, oh, you'll grow in your body. I mean, it took me a good bit to kind of feel like, yeah, all right, I know exactly what I'm doing. I know where everything's going to be. I mean, I'd probably say even through college, I still was kind of growing into my body, just because I started to gain a little more weight. Wasn't growing anymore, so I stuck around 6'6" ish. But I mean, gained 20 pounds, like that changes everything. That changes how you move and like what you need to feel in order to move correctly. And so as I kind of started filling out more, that was definitely more of a challenge I wasn't really expecting to have.
That's good feedback, and I have some other questions on that later. But before we get to them, I'm curious what was it that made UVA, like jump off the page for you? Like obviously it was relatively close to home. Some people in your situation, they want to go further away from home or they want to go someplace warm weather. Obviously, academics with your brother going to Harvard was, I'm sure, in the mix. But what were the big things that made you decide on UVA?
So I never really had a like a for sure school I wanted to go to. I always thought maybe Stanford, just because I'd always grew up and was like
Yeah.
Stanford baseball, and that's it. West Coast, let's get out of here. Reached out, never heard anything back. Vanderbilt was pretty much the same. Heard great things, reached out, never heard anything back. And then I started getting a lot of traction with ACC schools. Virginia Tech was my first offer. Duke, Wake Forest was where I really wanted to go as well. UNC, UVA, and so it kind of just was like it probably went within 3 4 weeks of I'm going to commit to Wake. No, UNC now offered. Okay, what about UVA? And so it was kind of whirlwind time, but UVA was definitely. I didn't even tour the they call it grounds, but campus. I only toured the baseball stadium and met
Mhm.
the coaches, and I was like, I love it. And so when they finally offered, I was like, yep, let's do it. So there wasn't a lot of thought process behind it, but it was definitely a crazy few weeks just trying to figure out, like, as an 18-year-old, what do I want to do? Where do I want to go? What do I want to study? Will this help me get me to pro ball? Will it hinder me from going to pro ball? Are there guys that are going to take my job? Like there's a bunch of questions that you need to answer. We don't have the answers to. You're 18. You're not supposed to
Yeah.
figure those out until you get there.
I love
So
that you're asking the questions though. I think so often,
yeah,
it's hey, it's green grass, pretty girls, and like awesome uniforms. Like, hey, this is a
yeah,
spot for me. And like, I always tell people you gotta look past that surface layer and ask questions. Hey, am I gonna have a new athletic trainer and strength coach every year? Is this coach gonna move on? Is this pitching coach gonna move on? There's so many other
yeah,
questions to look at. So I
yeah.
love that you were prying deeper. You had mixed results in your first 2 years at UVA. Most notably, like your numbers, it was interesting. You were relieved exclusively as a freshman, had some decent results, and then as a sophomore, you became a starter, and it did not go well to start the year. And then you jumped to the closing role and just took off. 70th overall pick after your junior year. And your numbers, I want to say the ERA was like a run and a half better as a reliever than it was as a starter. What was it? And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what was it about relieving that suited you so much more perfectly than starting did?
Yeah. So freshman year was just kind of getting like acclimated, I'd say. And if you're starting as a freshman, good for you. But like obviously, there's only 4 starters, so
Yeah.
didn't make that, and then was kind of getting a little traction towards the end and getting my feet wet and start feeling good. Sophomore year, they wanted to make me a starter. I said, sure. I did it all in high school. Like that's what I came here to be. The results weren't good at all, and I don't remember exactly what ended up happening, but it was velo started to go down. I was getting hit around. I was walking people, and I think midway through the year they just flipped me and the closer. And I guess maybe just the new role or just being pissed off that I wasn't doing well, because sophomore year is when you need to kind of make a name for yourself. That it kind of just I kind of came into the role pretty well, and I kind of thrived off of that. Throw as hard as you can for one inning and let's ride. So junior year came around and they asked me to be a starter or closer, and I said closer, and so it kind of just paved the way for where I'm at now. But I definitely think I made the right decision, just
Yeah,
from my aspect.
it's fascinating because the I was actually looking at like the kind of the game by game philosophy, and you went from being like an 88-90 guy to like sitting like 94.8 in your first, kind of outing as a closer. So it really took
Yeah.
off. Talking about like summer ball, like I think you went to both the Cape Cod League and also the NECBL, right? Was that after freshman year and sophomore year, or how did it all play out for you?
Freshman year, went to Keene, New Hampshire for NECBL. We finished early, so then they sent me to the Cape for a week. Didn't do well, went home, didn't think anything of it. Assumed that being at UVA, upper echelon, like they would send me to the Cape. Didn't go there. They said that you're going back to Keene, New Hampshire. I said, great, sounds good. Went back there my sophomore year, had a great time. And that was the extent of my summer ball. So I never really got that like full experience with the Cape, but I had a great time in Keene, New Hampshire. 2 good summers there.
Oh, that's awesome. And you definitely got plenty of innings. Like I think it's becoming less and less common for guys, particularly after their freshman year, if they get a lot of exposures to go out and play summer ball. I feel like more and more programs are just like telling guys, take the summer, let's get in the weight room, let's do what we need to do. But in that vein, your velocity surged a lot going from sophomore year to junior year. Like I know that was obviously probably piggybacked a little bit on going to the pen. Was it a mechanical adjustment on top of that? Was it getting stronger? Was it just figuring out who you were? Do you think it was just the nature of like selling out for the dream for an inning?
I actually joined the Y up in Keene, New Hampshire. My host family set it up. It was like $10 a month, and I gained like 25 pounds.
That's incredible.
And so when I came back, again, I wasn't really thinking like, hey, this weight's going to change the way I throw. And then I got out there in the fall, and I was like throwing a little harder. And then the spring came around, I was like, I've never sat 95s, touching 96, 97. All right, let's ride with it. So I couldn't tell you the exact formula of what really happened, but I definitely think I went from like 215 to 235 over a summer. And it must have just clicked. That must be looking back, that's like what weight I want to be at. Like when I'm feeling great is like 235, 240. So anything in between there. But I guess I just found that sweet spot and didn't know about it.
I think that's a really good lesson. You hinted at, the challenges with tall guys, right? Like, they hit this growth spurt in their teenage years and their center of mass is really far up away from their base of support. So they're kind of just inherently unstable all the time. And, you put 20 pounds on somebody's lower half and it kind of grounds them. But the problem is, I feel like over 6'4", you don't really know. I've seen guys who are 6'5", 210 that just feel super athletic and don't want to get heavier than that. And you see other guys that want to be 240. So I feel like everything goes out the window after 6'4", and you just got to manage it on a chase by chase basis. What were you when you actually got to campus weight wise?
185.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a big deal. People don't realize how much 50 pounds actually is, even on a 6'6" frame.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, you move forward to pro ball, right? And you close in low A in 2018, and then you close again in high A in 2019. And then COVID happens. And so you got invited to the alternate site, which is, to be honest, I've had several guests over the years, like Josiah Gray talked about it a lot. It's just like, there were a lot of guys that just figured things out at the alt site. It was just a chance to be around some veteran players, good competitive environment, and really just work on stuff when you couldn't go out socially. You couldn't do much of anything else except for baseball. And you wound up in the big leagues in 2020, thanks to some COVID cases and made 3 appearances. But I think we both know not many players skip AA and AAA. I don't think Juan Soto did that as he was going, to the big leagues at 19. Was that a massive adjustment, or was it such a small sample size? And, was there like an element of just being a little naive that you didn't appreciate it?
Yeah. I mean, even 2020, if you ask anyone, that year was crazy, regardless of what happened to you, whether it was a good year for me, I made my debut, or a bad year where you didn't go to the alt site and your season was shut down. I mean, just regardless, like that year in itself was just wild. But I didn't even, let's see, that was my first big league spring training invite. It lasted like 2-3 weeks, I think it was. And then, hey, you're going home. We'll see you back here in 3 weeks. All right, I'm just going to leave all my stuff. So I went home back to Virginia with like a pair of cleats and a glove. And like, that was it. Expecting to fully go back to Arizona in 3 weeks. And nothing really happened. Didn't hear anything. Was playing catch into a net, like with my dog outside. Like, because we couldn't go anywhere and everything was shut down, especially up in Virginia, like being right outside the Capitol. Like everything was strict. Matt Truella, do you remember him?
Yeah.
He was my throwing partner. We got kicked off of so many fields out in, out in our area, just because we were like, hey, we're doing our job. We just want to play catch. We're not.
Yeah.
Anyways, so like that whole thing was just so weird. And then finally got the call to go to the alt site, which happened to be in Denver for us. So we were waking up at 8 a.m., throwing sim games at 9:30 in the morning, and then getting out and then having the big league team come in because we couldn't kind of mingle. And it was just like a weird time. But guys would we just sit in the hotel and just talk shop. I mean, hey, what'd you think today? I threw you 3 sliders. 2 of them I thought were pretty good. The third one was, what do you think? Yeah, man, You know what I mean? They just bounce ideas off each other. Regardless if we kind of took anything from that, I don't know. But my velo, for whatever reason, just took a huge jump. And I started feeling some pain in my shoulder a little bit before that, but it kind of just, hey, I'm throwing hard. I'm not really thinking anything about it. And so I ended up sitting 6 to 8, touching 100. Never done that before. And then as soon as that happens, I get the call. So like everything was just so quick, and it was bizarre. Like nothing really added up. We weren't having real games and stuff. So I think those 3 or the 6 days that I was up there, the 3 games that I pitched, like happened like that. Like I couldn't tell you I could tell you a little bit about my debut, but other than that, like everything was just so weird. We were eating box lunches by ourselves, like 6 feet apart. Like those are the things that I remember about that season. I don't really remember much about who I was facing, what I was throwing, like all that stuff. So now come to this year, when I came back up, I kind of called it like my debut 2.0, just because my family could be there, my friends could be there, my girlfriend could be there, like cousins, aunts, like everyone that. So it was fun to have that kind of feeling again, because I feel like the first time it happened, it wasn't really like a true debut.
Yeah, COVID was an interesting. That the whole like year was such a I mean, obviously it was a downer on a million different fronts, but from a baseball standpoint, I think it was just an insane level of focus for some guys that they might not have otherwise gotten. I mean, Pete Strzelecki, no minor league season, just like put his head down and worked and turned himself into a big leaguer. Like so many of those guys that really put in a lot of time. And I think beyond that too, like you probably appreciated the game extra, right? Like we probably take for granted that there's, dozens and dozens of games happening at all levels of baseball, on various TV and web platforms, like every night that you can watch, and they take it all away. Like, if your buddies are home, not playing and you're at the alt site, you want to make those reps count, it's a good opportunity. You hinted at a little bit of the shoulder stuff that crept up in 2020, but kind of maybe talk a little bit about like the timeline on it and how it progressed in the months and the year that followed.
Yeah. So 2019 was in high A. I had strained my oblique just playing catch, and then took like 3-4 weeks off because you couldn't, obviously, like the rehab process behind that is minimal movement, lots of abs, strengthening the core.
Yeah.
And then when I started coming back, started feeling a little like discomfort in the shoulder. Didn't think anything of it. At this point, I had 0 shoulder pain, 0 elbow pain, like no problems with my arm. Like it just felt great. And so that was like kind of my first incident of like, maybe I should start doing some arm care stuff. Maybe I should start kind of get a routine going, because before then it was a couple bands, go do your stretch out on the field and throw. Then come 2020, it was a little bit worse. It would be like the first 10, 15 throws, I just kind of have sharp pain, but it went away. I was throwing hard, power through it. And then once that season ended, 2021, it was finished spring training. Velo was really down, wasn't really throwing like anything sharp. Shoulder was still hurting. So I got a double A. So I went from high A to alt site to the bigs, back to double A, and pitched like 9 innings. Was doing terrible. Velo was down, having issues, got shut down. And then we got an MRI and it says it was partial tear. So again, I hadn't really known anything about any of that stuff because I never really needed to. So trying to figure out like, okay, what can we do? Is there shots that we can do? Is there cortisone? Is there certain rehab? Am I deficient? I don't know. So all those things are kind of going through my head. And it kind of all came to fruition after I failed my rehab 4 times, that surgery was the only kind of route to go. But I was in denial for a long time, that's for sure. But as you know, I talked with you through it all and we kind of figured it out. But it was definitely a dark time for me after that.
We interrupt this podcast with a quick reminder that this episode is brought to you by Ag1. It's an NSF certified all-in-one superfood supplement that features 75 whole food sourced ingredients designed to support your body's nutritional needs. I use this product daily myself, and a ton of our athletes do as well. Head to drinkag1.com/Cressey and claim my special offer of 10 free travel packets with your first purchase. Ag1 gives you peace of mind that you're covering all your nutritional bases. Again, that's drinkag1.com/Cressey, CRESSEY, and you'll get that special offer. There's a lot of talk about avoiding shoulder surgeries at all costs. They obviously get a much worse rap than an elbow intervention.
Yeah.
and you had, I don't share details, but it was labor repair.
Yeah.
It was something that was a little bit more involved, but what was interesting was you had a ridiculously, I'm knocking on wood here, but you had a ridiculously smooth rehab process and a smooth return to action as well. As you look back on that, I mean, obviously the intervention happened at the end of 2021 and you were back in the big leagues in 2023 with good velo. Looking back, what do you think you did well during that process? Like, were there mistakes that looking back you could have made that you had avoided? And maybe building on, is there some advice that you would share with others that are going through the same process of any kind of shoulder surgery, big picture?
Yeah, I mean, don't look it up online. That's for sure, because that was the first thing he did, and it was like
Yeah.
the caption of the article was like the kiss of death, like
Yeah.
pitcher gets shoulder surgery. I was like, oh god, all right, here we go. But I had been in so much pain, just like everyday stuff, like reaching for the seatbelt, trying to lift the sheets off of my bed in the morning, like just painful. And so I got to the point where I was like, I'm just ready not to be in pain anymore, whether that's I'm living my 9 to 5 life and I'm going to work or I'm still playing baseball. And so like after that surgery, it was kind of just like, okay, well, let's start again and kind of rebuild. And came down here, worked with Eric Schoenberg, and I don't have anything bad to say about everything that we did. I mean, there's not one thing that I could think of. I was like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, or we should have done more of that. I mean, it it forced me to be aware of my body and kind of give me like a routine that I can go by. Because before then, I hadn't really done a lot of shoulder care, and if it was just like very eye wash stuff, like some dumbbells, like right after the game, just to kind of feel good. But we kind of sat down and said, all right, what was I not doing well? Was I doing anything that was like inhibiting my shoulder and might have caused this or accelerated the tear? And so we had a good plan going forward. And I mean, it was just every day, 2-3 hours of just rehab stuff. Very monotonous, but I mean, I didn't have anything else to do. So
Yeah,
I
I think you
just
did
kind
a
of
really
said,
good job of like not skipping steps. And
yeah,
I'm extra aware of this with guys like, you walk into the facility, the music's bumping with DJ Bennett Sousa taking over the reins to the stereo. Like there's energy and it's you can quickly get out over your skis and push too hard and it takes an element of restraint, like as you're going through a rehab process, not to skip steps. And I think you did a really good job with that. But I think the thing I come back to is like you didn't just get asymptomatic, like you got smarter. Like you
yeah.
understood your body, you invested in it. Like what are the things that as you look back that you changed the most? I mean, obviously, like you talked about the prep routine, but were there delivery things? Was there, off-season throwing program components? What were the biggest adjustments that you made?
My posture was terrible, and I had no idea. And so whether it comes with the territory being
Yeah.
tall and lanky,
Yeah.
I don't know. But I mean, that was like one of the first things Eric brought up. He's like, hey, man, like if you want to put your shoulder in a good position, it's got to start in a good position.
Yeah.
And I was walking around just like this, slumped over. And it kind of was like, yeah, I mean, you're totally right. Regardless if I'm in the gym wearing like I bought a shirt to pull my shoulder back. I tried the straps, I tried everything. And so that was like a big like eye opening for me because my shoulder started to move a lot smoother. I wasn't like I don't even know what's the phrase where you like dig it forward. I don't even know what that was, but
Anterior tilt.
yeah, I was
Yeah.
I had no idea. And so like I said before, it was just being aware of the things. Like I could go in, I could crush your workout in 2 hours and not think anything of it, or I could take my time and make sure that everything I'm doing is correct and I'm in a good position, in a good form. And yeah, it might take an extra 20 minutes, but like I said, I didn't have anywhere to go because
Yeah.
I was at rock bottom. So I was like,
Yeah.
I'm going to take my time to make sure that I'm moving the best way possible and be
Mhm.
aware of it if I'm not, so that I can kind of just coast from there and then have Eric working with me less and me being able to do all the things that he's been showing me on my own and not have to kind of rely on him to be like, hey, is this in the right position? Hey, is my scap back and loaded? Stuff like that.
When did you feel like the velo was actually back? Because right, there's return to play and then there's return to performance. Like to me, it's a failed rehab if you come back and you're 89 pain free. Like that's not the Tommy that you want to be. Like when was it that it really clicked? I mean, surgery was I want to say it was late September of 2021, maybe.
Late September,
Yeah.
it was September 23rd,
Yeah.
2021 or 21st, one of the two.
Yeah.
Um, So spring training this past year was the first time I kind of really got competitive, like ABs, I would say, like throwing lives and stuff. Felt all right. I mean, it was good to kind of be back, um, like competing and finally having like that aspect of just being like, I could finally play again. It definitely, it took a couple reps to kind of be like, slow down because I just wanted to go, go, go because it
Yeah.
had been so long. It had been pent up. Like, I'm just ready to throw. I'm ready to get back out there. So I'd say like probably a little bit after spring training is when it started to kind of fully like let it go. It was almost as if there was like a subconscious like governor on the shoulders being like, hey, I'm like, so okay, we're speeding up a little bit, but I think eventually it kind of just let go and I kind of trusted it because there's always that aspect of going through the rehab process of like, is it going to hurt again? Is it going to catch? Is it going to snag? I wasn't really thinking it was ever going to tear again, but it was just more along those lines of not fully trusting it. And so I feel like once you kind of get in that headspace of I'm competing, I'm trying to get this guy out, you kind of that gets shoved to the back.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe building on that a little bit, like, I know there was obviously the hiatus from throwing during the rehab time period, but your pitch mix has evolved over the course of your minor league and your major league career, which is not uncommon, particularly for obviously Rockies players as you guys are starting to navigate altitude and things like that. What were some of maybe the adjustments that you made to the pitch mix? What lessons you've learned along the way, and then maybe outline what you've settled on, what you are now.
Yeah. So I used to be sinker slider or slider-ish cutter. That the pitch can never be defined. It's anyway. See, well, that's another story. So uh, when I was kind of coming back through rehab, especially first starting out throwing, I was trying to throw the sinker and just kind of like manipulate it, but then I was not like focusing on what I really needed to be doing, which was focus on the reps, good repetition, making sure a smooth arm path, like mainly shoulder stuff. And so we kind of, me and Eric Schoenberg didn't get rid of the sinker two seam, but just more said, hey, let's just throw four seams. Let's just get you back. Let's get you healthy. Let's get you feeling good. And we can worry about pitch design and pitch shape later. And I never really kind of got it back. And so I was struggling a little bit in the beginning because what I was before, the pitcher I was before, is not who I am now. And I'd lost velo. I didn't have movement on my fastball. And so I was kind of stuck. And I was like, what am I going to do? And so talking numbers with some of the analytical guys over at the Rockies this year in spring training, it kind of just became, hey, like you can throw your slider wherever you want, whenever you want, just do that. Mm-hmm. And then once the stuff starts coming back, you start feeling a little bit better, we can start incorporating it. And so then I kind of primarily became an off-speed guy, whether it was like a 88 to 91 slider cutter or dropping it down to 85, 86, like a slurve. And then had a four-seam fastball that was okay, but it wasn't great. And then still was kind of working on the two-seam sinker and bullpens, but it never really came to fruition this year. I don't know why I never really brought it out, but it just wasn't really a comfort thing. So I stuck with that, and it worked. But definitely this year, with not having to focus on rehab, I want to be able to really work on pitch design. So it'll be fun because it hasn't been something I've been able to do for a while, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's hard when you chase two rabbits; they both get away. So sometimes the variability of having too many different pitches during a rehab timeline can just pull you in a lot of different directions.
Yeah.
So your first outing back in the big was 93.9 average velo. So it's spiked up a little bit compared to some of the minor league numbers, and you went multi-ups. And I think when you go 2 innings and you return to the big leagues, you probably immediately start thinking like, all right, now I got to understand workload. And I think like managing in-season training and throwing is really something that a lot of relievers, struggle with, just in the context of like, all right, if I lift today, I might throw tonight. Is that okay? And they always wait for the perfect time to get their work in. Do you have any big picture thoughts on what's worked for you? As you manage really this 2/3 of a season where you got back up to a really high level this year, both in terms of in-season training and throwing, what's worked for you as you've come back?
It's different for everyone. And you can watch guys lift every day and try to do what they do, and that may not be for you. I kind of learned that lifting heavy wasn't really my thing. I'd rather lift light or body weight and do that 3-4 times a week, and then just do a bunch of arm care stuff. For other guys, it was I want to lift heavy twice a week and have it be the day after I throw. Some guys are more at liberty to know when they're throwing versus not. And that can also change between AAA and up in the bigs, whereas AAA, it's pretty set out and you can kind of get your work in. But once you go up there, it's a whole nother animal. And so just keep to your routine. I mean, I'd say that's the biggest thing for me is I just kind of kept with it, whether it was up there, whether it was kind of counterintuitive. I don't know, because we were throwing a bunch. That's something that you kind of have to figure out on your own as you go through it. But I would say what you did in AAA or the lower levels, definitely don't change that just because you got to the bigs or you got to the higher level. That doesn't really make any sense. Regardless of things that change or you see other guys, I mean, just stay within yourself. That's kind of what I've learned the most.
It's a tinker, not an overhaul. The more and more advanced levels. I like that. We always do a lightning round at the end of each one of these podcasts. You probably listened to some of these before. So I'm curious, what advice would you give to a teenage Tommy Doyle?
Roll with it. I mean, my path to the bigs and back is not, I haven't heard a lot of people like that. And I'm happy for it. I mean, it's made me who I am today, and I wouldn't take it back, but I mean, just roll with the punches, man. I mean, it's not going to be a straight path. I've heard that before, but I lived it now, and I can see that that's true. It's never really a straightforward path to the show or to where you want to be. So that's what I would probably tell myself.
Nice. What about pitchers that you like to watch and why?
I would say it's cliche because he works out at the gym, but I would say if you want to watch an absolute dog, watch Max Scherzer throw, and just look at don't. It doesn't matter where the ball goes. Just look at his mannerisms in between pitches. That guy he's up there with just I don't even know how to explain it, but it's just an absolute dog.
Yeah. And I think, it's funny. I even saw there was an article that literally just came out about Max not wanting to talk to George Bush before his game start. ALCS start. And, it's obviously timing specific. Max is great about taking guys under his wing in the offseason. Like, he'll chat with anybody anytime and hear him out, ask probing questions and give advice. So, like, it's cool to have that resource at your fingertips.
Absolutely.
Okay, so actually building on this, what is a good lesson that you learned from another CSP athlete at the gym?
Tyler Kinley actually brought this one up, and then again another cliche because he's one of the best guys in the gym.
And a Rocky too. You got a lot of Kinley in your life.
Yeah, he said, because he's had his fair share of injuries and surgeries, and after I got mine last year, I was just kind of talking shop with him, like, hey, like, what'd you do? Like, is there certain things I need to be careful of, just especially with these rehabs I've never done before? And he just kind of said, yeah, it sucks, but it happened. And that should light a fire under your belly to get back up there. And he's like, there needs to be a reason why that if you get up there again, you need to stay up there. And this is the reason why, because you put in all this work, took all the time, like you got there and then got surgery and came back down. So he just said, like, this needs to be your why as to why you feel like you deserve to be back up there. And so that kind of stuck with me, whether he knows that or not. But
I love that. And for those who haven't heard it, Tyler was an awesome podcast guest. He is I think this is a quote. He was a self-proclaimed redshirt All-American. Missed 3 of his 4 years of college with injuries, and then put it together. And obviously, he's made a good big league career out of it.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, what qualities do you think were the most impactful in the coaches who've had the most profound impact on you as an athlete?
There's been a couple, and I think each one's different, and I think that's good, and I think that's the reason why they've kind of stuck out. I mean, if you're not a big numbers guy, like, it all depends on kind of who you are. So for me, I was never really a big numbers guy coming up through the system. And so I found a numbers guy, and we kind of just talked shop, and it wasn't him telling me, hey, you need to do this. It was, why don't you try it out? You got nothing to lose. And so we kind of just built a rapport on that. And I kind of just, it's a lot about trust, whether it was he was telling me what to do or not. I trusted him, and it went a long way. And so he kind of stuck out with me. Another one would be another pitching coach who wasn't a big numbers guy, but just loved to talk shop, talk life. Like, he's with the Rockies. He had 10 years in the show. And so he just was like, yeah, I've been there, done that. Like, what do you need to know? What do you want to talk about? Like, just kind of a good teammate guy. And then there's the last one that's just someone that you can just kind of talk to that's not baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And it's those come they come and they go, but it's you kind of respect them a lot more when you can talk to them about anything and know that that's not really going to go anywhere. It's just not like a shrink or anything, but you can kind of just, hey, I'm having this issue, or I just need to get this off my chest, and then it's just, oh, we're done.
I
So
like
I'd
that.
say like for that, just mutual respect, communication, and kind of just knowing the people that you're working with as a coach is definitely goes a long way for the guys.
Good stuff, man.
Yeah.
Well, this was outstanding. I appreciate you taking the time and sharing some bits of your story and some pearls of wisdom that I think are going to help some kids that are working their way up the recruiting ranks and shoulder injuries and things like that. There's a lot to take from this one. So thank you for taking the
Yeah,
time.
absolutely.
And
Thanks for having me.
no worries. Folks can find you on Instagram. It's Tommy Doyle 16. So happy for you, man. It's cool to see you back in the show and having all your hard work rewarded. So we appreciate all of it.
Thank you. Thanks so much for tuning in to the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast. We really appreciate you carving out some time in your schedule to listen, not just to this episode, but also to some of the episodes from our archives. If you enjoy what you heard, we'd love it if you'd share it with friends, colleagues, and teammates, as well as leave us a review on Apple Podcast and Spotify. Thanks again for your time.